Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, December 16th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Kim Mo-kyun. Before we get started, these are the stories we're following at the top of the hour. South Korea reported 1,078 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. This is the highest daily figure so far since the beginning of the outbreak in the country in late January. The U.S. FDA said that there is no specific safety concerns that would preclude the issuance of an emergency use authorization of Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine, hinting at emergency approval by later this week. U.S. President Donald Trump plans to veto the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act, partly due to limits set for troop withdrawal from countries, including South Korea, Afghanistan, and Germany. Starting off with the COVID-19 situation here in South Korea, the third wave of the coronavirus reached a new high in the country today with close to 1,100 cases. Cluster infections are popping up at religious facilities, and in recent days, nursing homes have also emerged as hotspots. For more, we connect to our Choi Jung-yun. Jung-yun, what's the figure for today?
Mo-kyun, South Korea reported 1,078 new COVID-19 cases on Wednesday. This is the highest daily figure of the outbreak so far. Concerns over the so-called third wave are also growing, as it's the second time the country has surpassed the 1,000 mark in less than a week, after recording some 1,030 cases on Sunday. Recent figures have reached the threshold for level 3 social distancing, which is an average of 800 to over 1,000 daily cases, or if the number doubles dramatically. Even though calls to implement the strongest antivirus measures are growing, authorities are rather cautious considering the massive social and economic impact it would have. Of today's caseload, 1,054 were local transmissions and 24 came from overseas. Most of the infections are focused in the greater capital area, but there are sporadic infections nationwide. Cluster infections have been found at religious facilities as well as nursing homes across the country. The country also saw 12 additional deaths, the second day in a row that the deaths have been in double digits. That takes the total deaths to 612. The number of patients in a serious condition has also increased, leading health authorities to focus on securing enough sick beds and sufficiently trained medical staff. As of Monday, there are only some 40 beds in the country to take critically ill patients. The government is actively seeking cooperation with private hospitals. That's all I have at this hour. I'll be back with more updates in our later newscast.
Thank you for that, Chung-yun. Do keep us updated. Now, following the rollout of Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine in the United States, the FDA on Tuesday issued an encouraging statement on the Moderna vaccine, hinting at an emergency approval by later this week. Our Lee Seung-jae has this report.
The U.S. FDA on Tuesday issued a positive statement on Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine ahead of a meeting of experts on whether to give it the green light. Confirming the overall efficacy of 94.1%, the regulators said there were no specific safety concerns that would preclude issuance of an emergency use authorization. Now, a panel of outside experts will hold a meeting and offer their recommendation on the vaccine on Thursday, with a final FDA decision expected shortly after. If the FDA does approve the vaccine, the first shipments could start rolling out next week. Moderna's vaccine would be the second after Pfizer won authorization last week and began rolling out their vaccination program on Monday. On the other side of the Atlantic, the European Medicines Agency is set to hold a meeting among its Human Medicines Committee to consider a conditional marketing authorization application for the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. The meeting was originally scheduled for December 29th, but it has been brought forward to the 21st. A favorable opinion on the vaccine on Monday would mean the vaccine could be authorized in Europe a few days later. The EU has an agreement with Pfizer for up to 300 million doses, with deliveries to start by the end of this year. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The Brazilian government has raised questions over transparency in the authorization of COVID-19 vaccines developed by China. Its health authorities said in a statement Monday that the authorization process of the CoronaVac vaccine being developed by China's Sinovac Biotech is unclear. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, a consistent critic of China, has repeatedly cast doubt on the CoronaVac vaccines dispatching a team of inspectors to Beijing earlier last month to visit a Sinovac lab to certify the vaccine's manufacturing process. However, the governor of Sao Paulo, a Bolsonaro rival, said the state is expected to start vaccinating its residents in January. Some parts of the world are celebrating the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines with hopes that the end of the pandemic is in sight. However, countries must still face some harsh realities, as health experts say vaccines will have no significant impact on the current COVID-19 crisis. Our Choi Min-jung has more details.
COVID-19 vaccinations are picking up pace as some countries like the UK and the US have begun vaccinating their populations. However, health experts say that vaccines will not have a great impact on the current crisis, as countries continue to face harsh realities prior to the Christmas holiday with surging COVID-19 cases and deaths. On the first day of Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine rollout across the nation, the United States hit a new record for COVID-19 hospitalizations. COVID tracking project data shows Monday's hospitalized patients exceeded 110,000, the highest figure since the pandemic began. On the same day, the country's total death toll also surpassed a grim milestone with over 300,000 deaths. According to the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, another 186,000 deaths are projected over the next 3 months. Even as people begin to get vaccinated, U.S. top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says it won't be until late next year that people can throw their masks away. Things are not looking too good in the UK either. While the UK, the first Western country to authorize a COVID-19 vaccine, continues inoculating its people, leading academics warn that the country still had a long way to go, saying that it may take up to a year to vaccinate the entire population. A recent uptick also shows that it is too early to relax even with the rollout of vaccines. The country reported more than 18,000 positive cases on Tuesday, bringing the total number of cases to nearly 1.9 million. The death toll rose 31% from last week, with 506 deaths recorded over the past 24 hours. In a bid to minimize the spread during Christmas, the government is in talks to impose stricter measures for the holiday. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump plans to veto the U.S. National Defense Authorization Act, partly because it limits troop withdrawals from countries, including South Korea. White House spokesman McEnany said Tuesday that Trump plans on vetoing the bill due to several problems, including its limit on troop withdrawals in South Korea, Afghanistan, and Germany. The remarks came days after the U.S. Congress passed the bill, which seeks to provide $740 billion in defense spending in the fiscal year 2021. The controversial bill, however, passed both the Senate and House of Representatives with veto-proof margins, meaning a veto by the president could be overridden in future votes. The diplomatic dispute between Australia and China, which began with Canberra's call for a global probe into the origin of the COVID-19 pandemic, is now leading to a trade tussle between the two countries. Our Kim Hyo-sun has more.
Tensions are mounting between Australia and China after Chinese state media outlets reported that Beijing plans to import coal without clearance requirements from most countries except Australia. The Australian government is demanding clarification, explaining that this is a clear violation of international trade rules.
If that were the case, then that would obviously be in breach of WTO rules. It would be obviously in breach of our own free trade agreement. And so we would hope that's certainly not the case. And that's why we're seeking clarification on this.
Australia's trade minister also urged China to sit down for talks to resolve related issues.
We remain willing to engage in dialogue to resolve these issues together, and that we urge China to clarify them, to reject the reports that have been made, to ensure that businesses engage on a commercial basis, and to sit down and work with us in relation to the issues so that we can avoid the types of legal processes like the WTO.
Coal exports are Australia's important source of export income, and annual coal exports to China amount to nearly $10.5 billion. Australia, however, has been embroiled in a worsening diplomatic dispute with China, especially after Canberra called for an international inquiry into the origin of the novel coronavirus in April. This led to Beijing imposing a series of trade restrictions on Australian imports, including beef and wine. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, global tech giants are expected to face major obstacles regarding tax and other regulations by the EU as the bloc proposed sweeping new regulations. Our Lee Kyung-in has more details.
The European Union is taking an ambitious step towards curbing the power of IT giants like Facebook, Amazon, and Google to make the region's digital market more fair and competitive. It proposed 2 draft laws that would impose stricter regulations against what they call digital gatekeepers, large online platforms that take up a huge share of the digital economy in the EU. They play the role of gatekeepers between businesses and consumers, while also blocking rivals or new market entrants from competing with their dominant power.
We respect companies, but we say that the bigger they are, the more obligations they may have to fulfill what is important to us. Everybody is welcome in Europe. But our responsibility is to decide and to give the directions and the rules just to protect what is important to us.
The first law is aimed at enhancing fair behavior in their business. The so-called Digital Markets Act will ban companies from enforcing pre-installed software or apps on users or harvesting users' data in order to compete against them. Violators could face huge fines up to 10% of their annual revenue. Another regulation targets e-commerce platforms, asking them to take more responsibility for their goods and services. The Digital Services Act would include identifying sellers so that rogue traders can be tracked down. It also requires them to be transparent with their recommendations algorithms and to swiftly take down illegal content. Violators could be fined up to 6% of their annual turnover. The UK has also made its own separate proposal to regulate companies over handling of harmful content. Lee Kyung-in, Arirang News.
The number of people employed in South Korea declined on year for the 9th straight month in November, marking the longest period of decline since 1999. According to Statistics Korea on Wednesday, roughly 27 million people were employed in November, down 273,000 on year. However, the situation was better than the previous month, when the number of jobs tumbled by 421,000. Apart from those over 60, all age brackets saw an on-year decrease in the number of people employed and the employment rate. By sector, South Korea's wholesale and retail, restaurant and lodging and manufacturing sectors all suffered job losses last month.
Good morning. It's another record-breaking morning of the season so far, with cold wave alerts remaining in place. In fact, people in Gangwon-do province are experiencing harsh winter days, with lows plunging below minus 20 degrees Celsius there. So daily highs in most parts will be similar to yesterday, though. Seoul getting up to just minus 4 degrees Celsius. Jeju at 5 degrees, with more snow in store in mountainous regions throughout the day today. In fact, it is still snowing on the west coast near the Jeollado provinces, the eastern islet of Dokdo and Ulleungdo, with a heavy snow advisory. So please drive and walk with care. Meanwhile, it's getting extremely dry in eastern parts of the country, with a dry weather warning in place for parts of the east coast now. And the capital region is now also under a dry weather advisory. And you know, this cold and dry weather is ramping up cold and flu activity levels, so please stay well. And this band of intense cold weather will ease tomorrow afternoon. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that's a wrap for us at the hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines at noon Korea time, so stay tuned. Thank you for watching and goodbye.